Good day. My name is Teresa Fredericks from Growing Businesses Using Projects, bringing you yet another video, this time on the compliance requirements for the implementation of the Procurement Act of Trinidad and Tobago. This is part 2 in the series, so that if you missed part 1, I would suggest you stop the video and go back to part 1 because you need that foundation. In this video, I'm asking, is civil society and individuals who receive public money ready for the implementation of the Act? The agenda, and in the first video we dealt with the term public money that both civil societies and individuals under the Procurement Act. We dealt with what are public bodies, we dealt with the objects of the Act, and we ended with the requirements for compliance under the Act. In this video, we would continue with the requirements for compliance under the Act. We would look at the general guidelines for achieving the objects of the Act, the special guidelines for NGOs, which are non-government organizations, members of civil society. We're going to look at the public procurement, retention and disposal of public property handbook, which is a handbook that you have to submit to the OPR for approval if you want to deviate from any of their policies and procedures. And then we're going to be looking at issues to be resolved, unsettled issues with respect to compliance with the Act. So this is where we would start this video. Requirements under the Act, re-compliance, and we're looking at functional organizational structure. It is critical for a public body or organization utilizing public funds to be suitably structured and resourced to achieve the objects of the Act. The functional organization structure for procurement, retention, and disposal of public property separates the roles and responsibilities of the key internal stakeholders involved in the public procurement function. Now, I keep saying procurement, retention, and disposal because most of the literature coming out on the Act just quotes procurement and disposal. But a big part of the new requirements is that systems be put in place to deal with retention. And what is retention? Retention of public property refers to the manner in which public property is stored, maintained, and used. Public property should only be retained if it contributes directly to the current or future service delivery outcomes expected by the public body and to its core business. The retention of public property also depends on whether the continued investment of public funds in a particular asset is cost-effective from a financial perspective, and whether the public property will provide strong public interest benefits. And it is suggested that a risk-based approach be taken to protect and maintain public property. So that is a very, very big part. Anyway, what we are looking at is the functional organizational structure. And what the OPR, which is the organization responsible for procurement under this new Procurement Act, is saying that a generic structure includes 3 positions: accounting officer, named procurement officer, and procurement and disposal committee. So let us look at the functions or why we need these 3 positions. The accounting officer has fiduciary responsibility to the Auditor General in accordance with the Exchequer and Audit Act, Chapter 6901 as amended. So that is the role of the accounting officer. Then you have the named procurement officer. This person is responsible for ensuring that the procurement, retention, and disposal of public property functions at the respective entity are planned and executed in a manner designed to achieve the objects of the Act. And I go back to one of my earlier videos where I said the span of control of the OPR is too wide, because a good bit of their work which I did not highlight, has to deal with retention, the oversight on retention. And the last of the key functional positions is a new position called Procurement and Disposal Advisory Council, responsible for verifying the procurement and disposal activities performed by a public body and providing a level of assurance to the accounting officer that these activities were performed in accordance with approved policies and procedures, handbooks and guidelines, and the annual procurement plan, which is a plan that has to be done by public agencies under this new act. They have to give what are their planned procurements over a period of 12 months, which is the year. The committee should comprise a representative of the legal department, finance department, and an individual with relevant technical expertise to advise on the specific procurement activity. So what you are looking at is a diagram that depicts an organizational structure, and herein is one of the big problems with the implementation of the Act, as rolled out by the Organization of Procurement Regulation. I read, the diagram depicts the organizational structure of a public body responsible for a high volume of significant, high risk or high value procurements and disposal. And throughout it seems to be concentrating on this target group. But the Act brings in small people, it brings in civil society, and there is no way a scale that shows if you are at this level, this is what you do, and if you are at that level, this is what you do. So that in this type of organization that deals with high risk and high value, you have a accounting officer, you have a procurement and disposal committee, you have a named procurement officer, you have an administrative officer, you have senior procurement officers, you have contract officer, you have junior procurement officers, and you have buyers or shoppers. So the organization that is saying, okay, I want to be compliant, what structure do I put in place? You cannot put in that structure. And what is needed really? Small businesses need to know or to be advised on this structure. It is critical for each public body to establish an internal control framework that will ensure the identification and mitigation of risks that are inherent to these functions. Internal control is defined as a process effected by the public body's board of directors, management and other personnel, designed to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of the objectives relating to operations, reporting, and compliance. And three words that you have to look at is operations. How are you operating day to day? What systems, procedures, what policies are you following? Reporting, are you meeting your reporting requirements? You have to report to the OPR, but you may have to also report to the board of directors, etc. What about compliance? Is the conduct of procurement, retention, and disposal of public property at your agency in compliance with the objects of the Act? Then internal control framework for procurement ensures that the procurement activities are exercised within a systematic framework of accountability. Accountability is one of the key objects of the Act. It is the responsibility of the procurement entity to establish appropriate internal control systems. An effective system of internal control will help provide reasonable assurance to the Parliament, various boards and accounting officers, as well as the general public regarding the achievement of procurement objectives. So this is the preamble that explains why there is the need for a framework of internal control. So let's pay a little more attention at what are the requirements of this framework. What are the key areas of this framework? Discussing so far is the organizational aspects of the procurement function. And this requires a procurement results chain, which is the overall procurement strategy and which sets the strategic direction of the function based on the existing strategic plan of the organization. It provides the expected outcome areas for procurement, retention, and disposal of public property. But let's delve a little more into what we are talking about in terms of the internal control system. What exactly are we trying to achieve? The purpose of the internal control framework for procurement is to help public procuring entities achieve their goals and to provide a framework of accountability for their activities. An effective internal control system will help provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of objectives in the following categories. This is from the UNDP handbook. The first one is operational objectives. Those relate to the ethics, economy, effectiveness, and efficiency of procurement operations, including the achievement of business or pragmatic objectives and effective financial management. It also relates to the safeguarding of assets from inappropriate use, loss, or damage due to waste, abuse, mismanagement, errors, fraud, and irregularities. The second set of objectives are reporting objectives. These relate to the internal and external programmatic and financial reporting of expenditures. The reporting encompasses reliability, timeliness, transparency, legislative requirements, and applicable standards through the proper maintenance of records and information flows. The last set of objectives are compliance objectives. These relate to adherence to the applicable laws, internal regulations, policies, and procedures relating to procurement. So what we're looking at is the control elements and principles in the internal control framework. And these are 5 areas. First is the control environment. This is a set of standards, process, and structures that provide the basis for implementing internal control throughout the public entity. An example, develop policy procedures, code ethics, and code of conduct. And here we are looking at integrity and ethical values, governance and oversight functions, and delegation of authority. The second area is risk assessment, which involves a dynamic and iterative process of identifying, analyzing, and assessing risk to the achievement of objectives. And we spoke about objectives just now. An example, create a risk register, categorizing the risk and capturing the probability and impact of the risk. And we are looking at several risks. We are looking at strategic, reputational, operational, and financial risk. Then you have the control activities, actions established through policies, procedures, guidelines, and directives that help ensure management's directive to mitigate risk to the achievement of procurement objectives. And the example, develop and implement a risk management plan. The fourth area, information and communication. Information is required for the procuring entity to carry out internal control activities to support the achievement of its objectives. And communication is the continued iterative process of providing, sharing, and obtaining necessary information. An example, develop and implement procurement system or an enterprise resource planning system, ERP. And the final area is monitoring. Ongoing monitoring and specific reviews are useful to review the entity's activities and transactions to assess the quality of performance over time and to ascertain whether each of the 5 components of internal control is present and functioning. An example is the ERP system, which assists with the monitoring of performance and also auditing. These are tools that the public bodies can use to carry out the 5 control elements. If you like my content, give it a thumbs up and please subscribe, and see you in the next video that continues looking at compliance procurement activities.